Somewhere in the last 20 years of financial media, a quiet consensus formed that has done more damage to the financial lives of people over 50 than almost any other idea I can think of. The consensus is not stated directly. It never is, because stated directly, it would be obviously wrong. Instead, it operates through implication, through the framing of articles and seminars and retirement calculators that all assume, without examination, that the financially productive years of a life are the earlier ones, that the work of building wealth happens in your 30s and 40s, and that 50 is where you begin the long transition from building to managing, from accumulating to preserving, from optimism to realism. The consensus says, in effect, that if you are over 50 and you do not already have what you need, you are managing a deficit rather than pursuing a possibility. My name is William Grant, and the revelation I want to build carefully today, not the inspirational version, the analytical version, is that this consensus is not just unhelpful, it is wrong in a way that has a specific and measurable financial cost for the people who internalize it. The cost is the foregone action of someone who could be building, but who has been convinced, by a narrative they never examined, that building is no longer the appropriate activity for someone their age. And the reason the narrative is wrong is that it measures only one dimension of the wealth-building equation, time horizon, while ignoring several others that are, for people over 50, systematically more favorable than at any previous point in their adult lives. The revelation I want to center today is this: wealth is not primarily a function of time. It is primarily a function of the efficiency with which capital is deployed. And the conditions that produce high capital efficiency, clear priorities, reduced competing demands, accumulated knowledge about what works and what does not, stable income at or near its career peak, are conditions that are maximally present after 50 in ways they simply are not present earlier. The standard narrative tells people over 50 that time is working against them. What I observe in 4 decades of financial practice is that the other variables, the ones the standard narrative ignores, are working for them in ways that can more than compensate for a shorter accumulation horizon, provided those variables are recognized and used deliberately. Let me be specific about what I mean by capital efficiency, because the phrase is precise and the precision matters. Capital efficiency is the proportion of available income that is actually directed toward wealth building versus the proportion that is consumed by the expenses, necessary and otherwise, that a life at a given stage generates. At 35, a person with a solid income might have a capital efficiency rate of 15 or 20%, meaning that after housing, children, career development costs, lifestyle exploration expenses, debt service, and all the other financial demands of that stage, roughly 15 to 20 cents of every dollar earned is actually available for directed wealth building. At 55, the same person, with the mortgage further along, children financially independent or approaching it, lifestyle preferences clarified and no longer requiring expensive discovery, career at its income peak, might have a capital efficiency rate of 35 or 40%. The income may be similar. The proportion of that income available for strategic deployment has more than doubled. And it is that deployment rate, not the time horizon, that is the dominant variable in determining what gets built. This is the insight that the standard narrative misses entirely, and it misses it because the standard narrative is organized around the behavior of a dollar already invested rather than around the behavior of the dollars that have not yet been deployed. A dollar invested at 30 has 35 years to compound before retirement. A dollar invested at 52 has 13 years. Within that frame, 30 looks better, and the conclusion that earlier is always better follows naturally. But the frame is incomplete because it ignores where the dollars come from in the first place. The 52-year-old with a capital efficiency rate of 35% and a meaningful income is generating a large volume of deployable dollars every year, far more than the 35-year-old whose capital efficiency rate is half that. The question is not which dollar compounds longer. The question is which situation produces more dollars to compound over the relevant horizon. And when that question is asked precisely, the answer is often not the one the standard narrative implies. The second dimension of the revelation I want to offer is about the quality of decisions rather than the quantity of capital. At 50, the experiential knowledge that governs financial decision-making is qualitatively different from what it was at 30, and the difference has a direct and measurable impact on outcomes. Financial decision-making at 30, however intelligent and disciplined, is inevitably speculative about a significant number of variables. What markets will do, what careers will produce, what lifestyles will satisfy, what risks will materialize. Financial decision-making at 50 is informed by the actual answers to most of those questions, drawn from decades of observation of one's own behavior and the behavior of financial instruments under real conditions. This is not a soft advantage. It produces demonstrably different outcomes in the decisions that matter most. The person who has watched a market downturn from the inside, with money at stake, knows something about their own risk tolerance that no questionnaire can reveal. The person who has carried debt through a period of income disruption knows something about financial resilience that textbooks cannot teach. The person who has bought and sold financial products across multiple market cycles knows something about the gap between what institutions promise and what they deliver that cannot be acquired through reading. All of this knowledge is available to the 50-year-old in a form it simply is not available to the 30-year-old. And that knowledge difference translates into better decisions, fewer expensive mistakes, more accurate assessments of risk and return, more consistent follow-through on strategies that have been chosen with genuine conviction rather than with the speculative confidence of someone who has not yet been tested. The financial industry knows this, incidentally. It is why experienced investors consistently outperform novice investors in real markets, even when their nominal returns are lower, because experienced investors make fewer catastrophically wrong decisions at exactly the wrong moments. The knowledge advantage is real. It is financially quantifiable, and it reaches its maximum availability precisely when it is most needed. The third dimension, and the one I want to spend time on because it is the most specific to the opportunity that exists right now for someone over 50 who has not yet built what they want, is what I think of as the convergence advantage. After 50, the financial demands that competed with wealth building throughout the middle decades begin to converge toward resolution. Children become financially independent. Mortgages advance toward completion or completion. Career volatility stabilizes into a period of predictable earnings. The social spending that calibrated itself to the expectations of an earlier peer group settles into patterns that reflect genuine choice rather than performance. What emerges from this convergence is a financial landscape that is, for the first time in decades, genuinely available for strategic thinking, for asking not just how to manage competing demands, but what it would mean to build something specific and significant with the resources that the convergence has freed. The convergence is not passive. It requires recognition and deliberate response. The income that was previously absorbed by competing demands does not automatically redirect itself toward wealth building when those demands resolve. It redirects itself toward lifestyle expansion, unless an intentional decision is made to capture it for strategic deployment. The person who responds to the resolution of their mortgage by expanding their spending to match the freed cash flow has not taken advantage of the convergence. The person who responds by deploying that freed cash flow into income-producing assets has used the convergence to create something that will compound for the 15 or 20 years that follow the payoff. The convergence is the opportunity. The decision about how to respond to it is the wealth-building act. What all three of these dimensions, the capital efficiency advantage, the knowledge advantage, and the convergence advantage, share is that they are active, not passive. They require recognition, deliberate action, and sustained commitment to produce their effects. They are not things that happen to someone over 50. They are things that a person over 50 can use if they reject the standard narrative that their age represents a diminishing position and replace it with an accurate analysis of what their position actually offers. The revelation, stated as plainly as I can state it, is this: over 50 is not the tail end of the wealth-building period. It is, for most people who are willing to look at it accurately, the beginning of the highest efficiency period, the moment when deployable capital, accumulated knowledge, and reduced competing demands converge for the first time in adult life. What gets built in this window will be built faster, more accurately, and with better judgment than anything that could have been built with the same resources 20 years earlier. The only thing required to take advantage of it is the willingness to see the position clearly, without the distortions of a narrative that mistakes time horizon for the whole of the story. I want to ask you something direct before you close this video, something that requires an honest answer rather than an automatic one. If someone presented you with a business opportunity that had high capital efficiency, experienced management, a resolved cost structure, and a clear target outcome, would you tell them the timing was poor because the window was too short? Or would you recognize that the combination of conditions they were describing was genuinely favorable, and that the question was whether they intended to use it? That is the question about your own financial position after 50. The conditions are there. The only remaining question is whether you intend to use them.